Welcome back to the Female Disruptors Virtual Summit. Happy to have you here. I am here with Gigi O'Brien. She is the author of The Intelligence of Happiness, and she is going to share with us today the 3 selves in self-mastery and touch on reversing trauma, which this topic has come up a couple times today, and I'm glad that you're addressing this, Gigi, and how to unlock your brilliance and live your dream life. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gigi, coming from where you're coming from, where?
Barbados.
Barbados. Yeah. So we're like hitting like every area of the planet Earth today. So go for it, Gigi.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Hello, everyone. I'm just so happy that you're here with us today. I'm Gigi. I'm an author. I'm the founder of the Global Intelligence Initiative, and I basically specialize in being human, how to understand how to work with our human intelligence and not against it so that we can optimize our life. And I want to give you guys a shout out because you showed up. And that's such a distinctive behavior between the people who get what they want out of life and the people who don't. And when you show up, you evolve and you grow. I did a lot of showing up in the past few decades. I was a bit of a nerd as a kid. I'm sure that got me a little bit ostracized from the cool kids, as did my afro. But the truth be told is that I just love learning. I loved pushing the boundaries of excellence. Even when I entered the corporate world, I joined American Express, their Centurion team, as a lifestyle consultant. And within the first year of the company, I got to the top of the continent. I got their Pacesetter Award, and I did a lot of things right. I ate healthy, I stayed skinny, I looked pretty, you know, I was very fun. I was a social butterfly. I smiled a lot. I volunteered in nursing homes. And then I moved over to Bali. I got out of the corporate world and I went to write a book. I started working in events, and I then got involved with a film production company and started chasing my dreams. There were a couple of failures, of course, which are the biggest lessons we learn. And I took all of that and I started to trailblaze into entrepreneurship. So at the start of 2020, I went over to LA and I founded my company, 111 Entertainment. And then the pandemic hit and our lives got turned upside down. On the 23rd of June, 2020, it was toward the end of the first lockdown. I found myself sitting in my apartment, staring at a bottle of bleach, wondering how much of this would I have to drink for it to kill me? And I was like really thinking like, how much could I swallow before it destroyed my esophagus? And would it be enough to end my life? And that's really dark. But when I wasn't in that high achiever space, chasing the next win, you know, I went from this fearless, ambitious, positive, radiant person, always grateful, into someone that was questioning, you know, if life was worth living. And to me, it happened in a bit of a snap of a moment, and I wasn't that conscious of it. And that's what made me realize that I didn't truly understand what happiness was. And even more concerning, without all the titles and everything, if I authentically understood who I was. So those 2 questions led me into deeper research for my book, because if we don't know what happiness is, we're going to mistake it for something else. And if we don't know who we are totally never going to be able to make ourselves happy. So it wasn't actually my first rodeo with suicidal tendencies, but that particular encounter made me want so bad for it to be my last. So I made the decision. I was like, you know what, this is it. I'm going to finish writing this book. I'm going to figure this out once and for all. And so The Intelligence of Happiness was born. And with the timing of the pandemic, a lot of mental health issues were surfacing. So it was also a way for me to feel connected to the world still, while we were all being separated, and do something that was greater impactful than just beyond myself and my struggle. So we often think that the perfect weight is going to make us happy, or when we reach our financial goals, we're going to be happy. If we meet our soulmate, we're going to be happy. But what if we got it wrong? And for me, that's exactly what I learned, is that those things are not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key. We show up so differently when we start with happiness. We show up to our commitments differently. We're more fulfilled in our pursuit. And even when we start from a place of joy in our health pursuits, whether that be weight loss or finally getting our nutrition correct, you know, we are in a different space. When we show up and we start with happiness, our ability to succeed in our goals amplifies, and we're in a better chance of actually getting the things that we want. Even with unconditional love, I'm sure you've heard the saying, when you're happy with yourself, you can then be happy with someone else. So I went to write the book. I sort of focused on pairing the brain's neurology with the mind's psychology. And then I added some cosmology and spirituality because we live in an energetic universe. A part of that was me being very curious about the law of attraction and manifesting and how that resonated with my internal human intelligence to the outward universe. So I had a lot of conversations that actually revealed to me my own purpose. Because when you start speaking from an authentic place, you're in alignment with your truth. And when you're in alignment with truth, you're in alignment with source. And then you're really off to the races for manifesting. So that turned into a couple of constructs of happiness. And I thought, okay, I'm going to put this out there in the hopes that it could help heal the world. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Basically, I've summarized the self-mastery into 3 versions of self. And when you master them, life really does start to become amazing. For me, it became, for lack of a better word, quite magical. And this time, my happiness and my life's worth, it wasn't dependent on external validation or success or even circumstance. I was in complete control and I came alive. I had so much energy. I was having so many creative and innovative thoughts, offers for collaboration, career opportunities. I met my soulmate and everything in life was pretty extraordinary. But that's what happens when we get into alignment with our purpose and when we're living up to our highest potential. We get to the crossroads where we watch our dreams become a reality. Fast forward now to the 20th of December, 2021, a couple of weeks ago, I tested positive for COVID. And I was isolating in that room, the room that I was in with the bleach just a year and a half before. And physically, I wasn't worried at all about the virus. I knew that I could fight it. But what I underestimated was that I was in that room with new trauma. Between the 2 occasions with the bleach and COVID, I had experienced a home invasion with my partner. This was about last February. And we were in a lockdown here in Barbados, and a man walked into our house one night. It was about 7:30 p.m. We had just finished dinner and I went to lay down in bed. When I saw him in the house, I was startled, but it was only when he was walking into the bedroom that I realized he was armed with a knife. So I was screaming. My partner heard me screaming. He ran into the room, but because the intruder was backing him, he didn't see the knife. So my partner jumped him and he ended up getting stabbed in the throat. Ironically, he always laughs. He's like, if you're ever going to get stabbed in the throat, this is like the perfect place. So long story short, we escaped. He lived and life resumed. Except for me, it really didn't. PTSD destroyed my personality. Anxiety took my joy, and it was unlike anything I had ever experienced in my life. For me, it was very, very physical rather than psychological. I was dealing with daily headaches. I had issues with my memory and my speech. I went to 2 opticians thinking that I needed glasses, but they just confirmed that my eyes were just really strained because of all the hypervigilance and constantly being on edge. So living that way with trauma is so unsustainable. And I realized one of the biggest lessons I had ever learned in life is that we can't heal big problems with small solutions. So I decided to carve out the time for healing, and I booked a Vipassana, went off to the jungle in Mexico. And even though I had all this experience with depression, I really, which is sort of the conscious and subconscious mind, I had no idea about trauma and the unconscious mind. So I had to show up and go. I went for about 8 days into the jungle to dig deep into that pain to try and understand it. Thousands of minutes of meditation later, I was pretty proud of myself. I had really learned, even beyond the unconscious mind, our superconscious, our super intelligence. So I was one of those guided meditation junkies, hopped on YouTube, listened to people constantly. But in the Vipassana, I got into the true essence of silence meditation. And when you're doing that, you're basically shutting down your conscious and your subconscious. And when you're getting into the innate super intelligence of the body, it's what creates life. So when we get pregnant, we don't give instructions every day of what to do to create life. That's our innate intelligence. And when we get out of the way of our super intelligence, because we shut off our thinking and everything, and we go into silence, deep concentration and just observation without thought, the body starts to heal itself. And so I realized that I had learned something super powerful as well as when it comes to manifesting. But just because I mastered this once, it didn't make me a master. And that's the thing about stress. It's that it has a way to trigger our pain points. So when we're, especially when we're at our most vulnerable, because it's got absolutely terrible timing. So when I was in the room with COVID for that 10 days, to say that I was stressed was an understatement. I had nowhere to run. And even if I did, I didn't have the energy to run anywhere. Once again, things got really dark. I was just with myself and I felt a little bit like a fraud. I was like, what do you mean? Didn't everything I learned mean that I wouldn't have to be in this situation ever again? No, it didn't. It, more than anything, it kind of showed me that there was still more work to be done and that the work is always ongoing. What we don't heal will come back to hurt us no matter how long we leave it for. So the pain will resurface, you know, childhood wounds will break open, our self-loathing might come up again, past heartbreaks will rebleed, grief will resurface and pin us down. So I knew then that what I wasn't going to heal was just going to come back again. So I decided I'm going to sit with my pain and have a conversation. And I thought, why not use my own framework? So enter the 3 selves. I started with the affective self, which is our emotional self and our self-esteem. And what I did was I started to name my emotions to see if I could get to the root of them. Often our surface level emotions like fear, anger, and sadness are rooted in deeper emotions like guilt, regret, and shame. And this is where depression really takes hold. So once you start having a conversation with your affective self, it actually has quite a lot to say. So I knew that this pain mattered and that questioning it mattered and that it was one of the most important conversations that I could have. In the book, I talk about the theory of opposites, which is basically that a person can't experience 2 opposite thoughts or emotions simultaneously. So if I couldn't understand stress, I would just lean into relaxation. If I couldn't obtain happiness, maybe I should focus on deciphering my sadness. And if I couldn't eradicate fear, I would need to develop courage. If I wanted to release anger, I would have to pursue pleasure. So often emotions that are destructive are associated with loss. So for instance, guilt is a loss of honor or trustworthiness. Regret is a loss of pride or opportunity. And shame is the lowest emotion that we can feel actually before death. And that's a loss of self-worth. So when we start to master our emotional intelligence, we can recover what we associate with the loss. Recovery then becomes very clear. Sometimes it's that simple, and sometimes it's a little bit more complex. I started to realize that a lot of the pain that I was experiencing had to do with what others had done to me. It's what the things that others do to us always comes up, or at least we feel that way. But life is happening from us and it's happening for us. And this is one of the fundamental things that I also learned, the external and internal locus of control. And there's a huge difference. The external locus of control is a blame. It's things are happening to me. But when you step out of that into your internal locus of control, you're stepping into your accountability. And you're thinking life is happening from me. So you feel like you have tons more control. And in that capacity, you feel like a creator as well. I am that I am. I'm internally in control and I'm creating my life and I'm manifesting it. I really believe that the quality of our life reflects the extent of control that we wish to assume. So with that in mind, I then started to explore my cognitive self, my thoughts and beliefs and my self-knowledge. And it was really here, even long after I'd written the book, that I had an epiphany as I was listening to my thoughts. I was still telling a story that fueled my pain and not only kept it alive in my present, but was helping it thrive. My own self-talk was what was triggering my trauma. So it turns out there was tons of room for improvement. I knew I needed to upgrade my story to support my healing in order to transform my pain into power. So I started reframing my thoughts about the past. I started looking at the beliefs that I had about the people in it, how I viewed myself, and most of all, how I could embrace the lesson. What was this teaching me? What was it showing me about who I am? And how could it empower me into who I wanted to become? And I had to constantly remind myself. So when you're doing this, remind yourself, keep others out of the story. A lot of the pain that kept coming up for me was because it was directly correlated to other people playing too big a role in my story. I had asked myself a simple question. If I'm not allowed to think about anybody else, and this is just about me, then what does that story start to look like and sound like? And that was where for me, I had supreme relief. I felt like a weight was really lifted. I started to forget about the guy holding the knife, the loved ones who had hurt me in the past, the business partner who stole, so much from me, the husband whose rage ended our marriage. And that's the point, is that we have to let these people go. We have to focus on the lessons and what the pain is showing us and how it makes us all the more powerful because we've gone through it. What's happened to us has happened for us. And then we have to look at the language of our thought. So the language of our thought paired with our emotion is what creates our frequency. And that's why emotion is so important to start with. It's energy in motion, emotion. And that's the vibration to which the law of the universe responds. Gratitude vibrates at an emotional frequency of around 900, which is higher than enlightenment, which is like 780. So it's one of the strongest frequencies that you can align with. I use gratitude as a bit of an emotional antidote. Forgiveness is the other emotional antidote that I use. And that one opened up a whole can of worms for me because it was the one that didn't come as easily as I thought it would, especially when it came to the others in my story. And worse, the ways I use that story to justify my own shortcomings, my defense mechanisms, my choices, my procrastination. I mean, your story will support your excuses. So it's so important to continuously revisit that story and not only practice the art of forgiveness for others, but also toward yourself. And for me, that started with acceptance. The past is what it was. But I also know that memory recalls the past in a way that's relevant to our current reality. So we have to be so intentional about the power of choice in our thinking. The next step for me was compassion. And this is where things really shifted as well, because when I looked at my story and the others in it through a lens of compassion and their suffering, where they were on their journey, I had a lot of softer emotions regarding how that story played out. And their role just shifted. I was so much more accepting and loving because they had probably been through their own suffering as well. And then the third thing I did was look at detachment. And this is where we find our liberation and freedom. We have to let go of the attachments to suffering and the parts of our identity that the attachment to that suffering has created. We are allowed to outgrow our pain. We're allowed to change our story. So trust me, you'll feel like a whole lot better when you forgive, because when you let go of anger, there's a saying, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So you just have to let it go. So when my emotions and my affective self were under control, my cognitive self was thinking and affirming gratitude and having appreciation for the lesson. I developed a growth mindset and my beliefs shifted into a story that was a lot more empowering for who I wanted to become. So the last thing to figure out was my executive self, my behavior, the doing part. And you can have all the clarity in the world, but I had to act in ways that supported my healing. Otherwise, the pain would just come back to hurt me. So you start to pay attention to what you're doing and you see patterns. But knowing what to do and actually doing it are two different things. So you have to observe your actions and see your motivations and your choices. And then you discover they're linked to your emotions, thoughts, beliefs, and behavior. So our affective and cognitive self is driving our executive self. But the executive self has a lot of power as well. The power of habit and what we choose to repeatedly do. So this is the power of the brain's neuroplasticity. What you repeat becomes habitual and it becomes hardwired. So it becomes then your comfort zone. Was I in a habit of suffering and was that my comfort zone? So I had to take ownership of my pain. And when we do that, when we claim it as our own, it's very powerful. If you add accountability to that, you're in an extraordinary position of strength. When we assume accountability, we take on the responsibility and the obligation to transform our pain. And we start to do what's necessary. We listen to our emotions, we transform them, we choose a healthy response mechanism by using the theory of opposites, choosing the constructive emotion, and we stop destructive thinking in its tracks. And if you're doing that, you're already at a head start, because it's that spiral of negative thinking that often depletes you so much and traps you in a depression. You can then repeat your affirmations to transform your thoughts into beliefs and keep doing the work. Do it especially when you don't feel like doing it, because you're honoring your accountability. And in my book, I want to spotlight one technique because it is so powerful. I talk about affirmative neurocognitive programming. It's basically just using positive affirmations to reprogram the three selves. So you're using affirmations about your emotions, about your thoughts, your beliefs, and your behavior. And on a neurological level, positive affirmations release dopamine, which is the reward molecule, and that reduces stress, depression, and anxiety. So what you're thinking and affirming and you're repeating, you start to believe. And if you're doing that and you're feeling the dopamine, your whole system starts changing. There's also nothing more powerful in manifesting in the law of attraction than a belief held in continuity. So continuously reaffirm, make it a part of your healing. When you remove your pain, you're removing what's stopping you from achieving your dreams. When you have nothing stopping you, you become unstoppable. And that is so liberating when you can move out of survival mode into the possibility of rising into your greatest potential. And this is what Maslow talks about at the pinnacle of the hierarchy of needs as self-actualization. So if we're not doing this work, the pain in some way is raising this neurological and psychological red flag to our body, and where we think we're under threat. So our species is engineered to stay in survival mode. We're very pain avoidant, and we'll always address pain before we seek pleasure. So if you remove the pain, you can finally get to the pleasure. So long as the pain is there, it's going to control your life. So you're probably wondering, how do you do that? And in order to do that, I created a 5C framework that's built around the three selves. And the first C is to control emotions. I really noticed that change takes place at a frequency of 200. For me, it's when emotions shift from destructive, they're detracting your energy, they're very heavy, and they're not constructive for you, to constructive, energizing, positive, life enhancing. And 200 happens to be the tipping point of courage. So focus on developing courage. Be brave enough to sit with your pain, to hear what it has to say, tell it to speak up, and be fearless, because you're holding on to that accountability to your healing. So when you do that, you're your power awakening. You have to step with courage into that power, even if it means going through your pain. Leverage your emotional antidotes. Use your gratitude and forgiveness. The second C is the commitment, the consciousness of thought, So be conscious of your thinking. If every single thought is an invitation for reality to reflect what you're thinking, what would you think about? And that is the truth. Every thought carries with it an instruction of creation, revealing the life that you've constructed. So much like pain can transform into power, thoughts actually take shape into things. So you have to think with optimism. You have to be curious. You have to be fascinated. Feel the privilege of the power of how you think, and also make sure that you're thinking positive. Thoughts also amplify what we feel. So that's a great way to take command of the creation in our lives. And even more so, more powerful than thought is beliefs. So the third C is the commitment to the beliefs that serve you. Beliefs are the truths to which your life is designed and constructed. Much as thoughts manifest into things, beliefs amplify the degree to which that happens. So what if you believed it were all possible, that you were capable, that you were the best candidate for the job, that you could obtain the money, that you could scale the company, that the audition would be memorable, or that you would finally get pregnant? What if you believed only in good outcomes? What if you believed possibilities were in abundance, that problems were easy to solve and solutions were easy to find? What if you listened to your optimistic voice instead of your pessimistic one? For starters, your whole vibrational frequency would change. You'd be excited, you would expect good things, you would perceive potential outcomes through a much more beneficial lens. You would feel so energized, and I guarantee you, because it's happened to me so many times, you'll start to manifest the things that you believe in. There's a difference between hoping for something and believing in it. There's the notion as well that if we create expectations, that we welcome disappointment. If you believe it, you manifest it. Don't believe in the disappointments. Learn the power of connected detachment. You can be connected to your life enhancing beliefs, but detached by trying to control the outcomes in your life. The secret is feel the good feels, think the good thoughts, believe in the good outcomes, and just see what happens. All of this will already change your life. But if you really want to explode into your power, and become unstoppable, the fourth C is where it's at. Continuity of behavior. You need to keep taking aligned action. Do the things that will leave you feeling good. Do the things that you think and believe are good for you. Meditate, journal, exercise, play, speak your affirmations, practice your visualizations, walk, swim, hike, learn, expand, show up, and just keep taking action. When what we feel, think, believe, and do are in synchronicity, we're in alignment. And let me tell you, that is really the mecca of where any goal is accomplished, and with ease. Alignment, things don't just fall into place. You fall into alignment. And this is the work. This is where the transformation happens, when you can really unlock your brilliance. So the most powerful C, the fifth C, consistency. And I feel like every coach and every speaker will talk about consistency. Keep showing up. What we do once is great, but what we consistently do is what leaves a legacy of greatness. So take ownership of your pain, step into your accountability to heal, be a badass, and do the work. You're never going to regret the dreams that can actualize when you've mastered your three selves, especially when that pain that was holding you back for so long is no longer holding you back. I truly believe that all the ways in which we have failed are just disguised ways that our pain kept thriving, and that changes now. So here's the journey of becoming unstoppable, and I can't wait to see where it takes you. If you weren't told already, you get a free copy of my book. Just use the coupon code Disruptor on my website. And I believe in you. I believe that your pain will reveal your purpose and that you're brilliant beyond measure. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and have the courage to be unstoppable.
Gigi, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I wish we could spend another hour with you, and maybe you'll come back and we'll do a Q&A next week or something, and we'll have a special Gigi Q&A about tapping into the frequencies. Like, I have a ton of questions, but we have another session starting, so we're going to get cut off in a sec. I just wanted to say thank you, and like everybody is saying in the chat, thank you. Oh my God, fascinating. This was awesome. So Gigi, thank you for sharing.
You're so welcome. Thank you guys. Lisa, enjoy.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.